Experience the most efficient system for delivering sulfur and phosphate to meet your crop's needs with Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST.
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Hey, thanks, Bern. It's a real honor, actually, thinking about doing this with you today. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate it. Hey, I appreciate it. Now, we can't let you retire without having you share some thoughts on 40 years working in weed control. You got started in the business in 1984 with Elanco. Tell us a little bit about the journey. It all started in Port Dover, Ontario, right?
It did start in, we say Dover. I come from a small farm, still farming there today. It's small by today's standards for sure, right? And we had all kinds of livestock, but back then everything was pigweed because we fed it all to the pigs. That's kind of the size of our operation. And then basically it was 1984 when I started working for Elanco when I really discovered there was other weeds other than pigweed, lamb's quarters and ragweed and nightshade and all that stuff. So, yeah, I did basically 20 years of research. Then in 04, we moved over into the sales and service side of things, which used all that knowledge maybe I gained the first 20 years and took it to growers and retailers.
When it comes to weed control, Brian, we've seen a lot of developments over the decades. What are some of the most important developments in your mind?
Yeah, I think there's some major cornerstone blockbuster products that were developed over time, and they didn't come all at once, of course. So you think back to 2,4-D. That it's big today. It was really novel back in the 50s or 60s. In the 70s, atrazine, right? And then glyphosate was also discovered in the 70s, but probably really didn't come into the foreplay until the 80s. I think pursuit in soybeans was a game changer for a little bit, and dicamba, of course. So there's probably others, but those are the 4 or 5 to me stick out. Wow, it would be pretty tough to farm today, grain production, agriculture without those 4, 5, 6 products.
Now let's travel back to the University of Guelph, the 1980s. Let's head back.
Yes,
you
sir.
were Dr. Clarence Swanton's first graduate student. Clarence, of course, is the researcher who developed the concept of the critical weed-free period. Brian, how significant was that development?
Well, at the time, I guess I probably didn't really recognize the fact. Clarence took a chance on me, another local Norfolk County boy, that I could do some grad study work for Clarence, and so we figured out the critical period in white beans. And then a few years after that, there's another grad student did the same work in corn. And we still refer to that today, the critical period of weed interference. My project was, starting with a pre-emergent herbicide, how long you needed weed control before you didn't need it and didn't get a significant yield loss, and conversely, how early did I need to come in with a post-emergent product, not getting the yield loss from that early weed competition, and then carry on weed-free to the season end. So we figured that out, and again, it's the cornerstone of weed control in any crop today, is controlling weeds during a critical period that can really be hard on yield.
Let's talk about how weed control has changed over the years, Brian. I know, prior to the 1980s, weeds really cost farmers a lot of money.
Well, we simply didn't have the tools, right? Like, forget about Roundup Ready crops, and quackgrass was a major weed in Ontario. Probably every farmer had quackgrass, and it was very difficult to control. Inter-row cultivation or scuffling was, that's how I cut my teeth, cultivating corn and then tobacco. There just wasn't a lot of herbicide options, and my dad was probably one of the last to actually use a herbicide on the farm at some point in the 70s. I remember it. It was like an epiphany, and Brian didn't have to scuffle too much corn after that, other than putting nitrogen on. So, and it's evolved since then. When you think about all the herbicides that came into play, and then the whole, we'll say, Roundup Ready or genetically modified technology has really changed the way we farm, for sure.
Let's have a look at the 1980s and the 90s. You mentioned it, right? You know, we had so much chemistry come into the market. It really was a dynamic marketplace.
For certain. Like when I was in research back then, like we were working on 2 or 3 products. It didn't matter what company I was working for. We had 2 or 3 what turned out to be major herbicides. We were, developing the label and doing the work to get things registered, and it was crazy, the number of tools, and there was a number of companies were doing that, right? And new modes of action too, right? That you could put together, and all of a sudden you could kill quackgrass, and you could do things pre-emergently and post-emergently, and fields looked a lot cleaner in Ontario or around the world because of that, right? So,
yeah. And things changed in the 90s. Now let's talk about the arrival of Roundup Ready crops.
Yeah.
Later in that decade, weed control got easier and cheaper. How did it change the game?
Well, I was with Monsanto at the time, and the whole Roundup Ready canola was the first crop being looked at, but it was off in the horizon, and I got nervous, so I moved on, right? But you think about, we had Roundup Ready canola, Roundup Ready soybeans, and soon thereafter Roundup Ready corn, coupled with glyphosate. Keep saying Roundup, but it was cost effective, right? It wasn't $25 a liter. It was $8, $9, $10, $11 a liter, and wow, you could spray it on a crop once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and not have to worry about any weeds.
Now, Brian, coming out of Roundup Ready crops, glyphosate-resistant crops, we're now in an era of resistant weeds, from Canada, fleabane, ragweed, water hemp, we're combining chemistries, modes of action. How challenging is it out there now?
Well, yeah, it's the crux of the whole thing, right? When Roundup Ready technology came out and the price of glyphosate, it made it really easy, right? It was cheap, it was effective, and then that word resistance came up, and I think all the companies, we kind of took a pause, right, before we realized, oh shoot, glyphosate isn't going to be the be all and end all for time, right? So I think along came some work by Syngenta and others, and again back to that critical period of weed interference. Maybe we can't wait till post-emergent, just doing that solely anyways, and got researchers and the companies looking, okay, maybe we can still fit this residual chemistry in and make it work.
You're retiring, but I know you'll be watching the industry closely. Tell me what you expect to see from a weed control perspective in the coming years. Where might we be 5, 10 years from now, and what tools and practices may be in the toolkit?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little concerned, right? Because we're very quick to, as growers, to almost misuse chemistry. I think it's so important to use more than one effective mode of action on every weed in your field, right? We used to say you could get away with 85% weed control and get the yield you wanted. Because of resistance, we need to get really close to 100% weed control and not let things get off the rails. Canada fleabane was really the training ground, and I think we figured that out with the use of residual chemistry and good post chemistry. More and more of us are dealing with water hemp now. Definitely a bigger issue. Luckily, it doesn't move around a lot like fleabane. But the whole pigweed family, the amaranth family, they're just huge seed producers, right? So we got to really try and stop those from going too far. And of course, I think the weed that really has potentially the biggest impact on production agriculture in North America is Palmer amaranth. We need to do everything we can to stop that weed from getting a foothold here, right? Because it's resistant already to so many modes of action, as is the water hemp, but Palmer amaranth is just, it comes resistant. Looking ahead, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, weed control is not going to get any easier. And I think it's going to be more complicated for every grower. Most important, two effective modes of action on every weed in the field. I hate to think it, but I talk to my interns about scuffling. They laugh, what the heck's that, right? Inter-row cultivating, like what we did in up to the 80s. And I think that when in a field like this, it's going to become a tool, right? Maybe not in a wheat field. And just and then looking ahead, you know, I just saw a clip this morning on a news show, and it was in a broccoli field or something, showed a robot and using AI technology to take out weeds. That's coming. You know, it's way far away before it works in a field like this to do it on a timely and quick enough and cost-effective manner for a regular grower like me to think about something like that, right? But in the meantime, we just need to be worried about resistance and think about crop rotation, herbicide rotation, multi-tools.
Hey, final question for you, and you know, you've worked, you know, with a lot of products, a lot of crops, a lot of farmers, and you know, you've earned a lot of respect from those farmers and in the industry. You know, what's been the secret of your success?
I don't know if it's a real secret. I try to live by the golden rule, so to speak, and treat my customers the way I like to be treated. You know, I've been, and I don't hesitate to say I've been blessed. I've worked for a lot of great companies. They give me amazing opportunities, and I think, you know, amongst my colleagues, I say I got the best customers, whether it be retail or grower, and a lot of great customers. Some of them don't even buy anything, but and become friends, and you just spend time with growers. Are awesome, right? And the more time you spend with them, you get to know them and what ticks, and yeah, I enjoy helping farmers grow the best crop. That's probably a Syngenta-ism, but I want to grow the best crop I can, and so I'm going to try to help my growers and retailers grow the best crop they possibly can.
Well, great stuff, Brian. I appreciate having you on Real Agriculture. And as I say, I know you're retiring, but will you be around? I'm sure we will see you down the road.
Excellent, you bet. Well, I'm a grower, so I'm a Real Ag subscriber. I'm always learning, and I look forward to learning in the future as well.